to some of you that are in the audience. We have a slightly different format this week for two reasons. One, we are also introducing you to newest member of DevRel, Serinko, and also I have to leave a little bit earlier today, so I'll just rush through the I'll go through the housekeeping, and then we can kind of get into it. Yeah, so as I kind of said last week as well, we'd just like to follow along with that. We've kind of got this, we've got a few kind of bigger things in the works that are being worked on. So last week, again, not too heavy a release in terms of what you would imagine as new kind of user-facing features, but this is all stuff that is going to allow for a load of extra functionality to be added once, we've kind of gone through the stack. So what are those things? We added support to the Nym CLI tool for interacting with the service provider smart contract stuff. So again, that's not been deployed on mainnet yet, but once it is, then you will have all of the tools, both from the CLI and a GUI, to announce your service providers, register them, unbond them, all of this in the same way that you can with mixed nodes and gateways. And will obviously make everyone's lives quite a lot easier when we trying to build out the amount of services that people are using. Other than this, some work on Nym Connect, which I think we can get into more on the next release, and then just kind of a load of bug fixes as well. The main one being the config version bug that was with some of the binaries. That has now been fixed. So it's no longer saying 1.1.14, even though you're actually on 1.1.21 or whatever. Week before, we have the Mixfetch project is being worked on. What Mixfetch is, I will kind of leave hanging, but it's a way of radically streamlining the current quite, should we say, step-heavy infrastructure of, trying to essentially just do something with a network requester. Yeah, once that kind of reaches the stage where people can play with it, I'll kind of dive more into that. Other than that, we had a couple more bug fixes on network requesters. The Network Explorer, the MixNet Explorer, now supports and shows all of the service provider details. Again, this is in the run-up to getting that smart contract deployed and the kind of proper decentralization of these lists of network requesters, which right now are on the kind of manually created Nym Connect infrastructure list. And then also a couple of bug fixes with the SOX 5 client as well to get rid of this kind of annoying hanging thing, this problem where you would start it up, but it already thought it had a connection to a gateway, but actually it's just because the connection didn't properly shut. So that has now been fixed. That's about it for the change logs. So Sudo, should we dive in?
Let's dive into introducing our brand new team member. I think he's joined us in the meantime. So guys, while you're leaving your questions in the chat, we're going to be answering those. So make sure to leave some good ones, also difficult ones, and make sure that they are questions which can be answered by soon TM. That's very important for these DevRel AMAs. And let's introduce our new friend.
I'd like everyone to meet Serinko, who's joined me on the DevRel team. And if you've been some of the more privacy focused crypto events recently, most recently some of the events in Prague, then you may have already seen him talking either about his own work to do with human rights and crypto or to do with Nym. So yeah.
All right, well then I guess maybe let's jump into the first question asked by Nick. How big is the DevRel team now? Max?
DevRel is two of us now with a third person coming very soon, which is cool. What we already have as well, which is really great to see, is not only is DevRel expanding, but there's actually quite a lot of you, most of whom are here actually in the top row, or at least the top couple of rows, that are either officially or unofficially also work as CMs and ambassadors and stuff like this, who are also stepping into that gap as well with technical support, both in Discord and in Element. And that is something that, if people are interested in doing, I'd also really like to, now that, we've kind of expanded DevRel a bit and everyone has a bit more breathing space, then also kind of working on how we can kind of also build like community links between DevRel and anyone who also wants to be doing technical assistance. But also just a general shout out to Serbs, Palma, Salazar, a couple of other people for doing that technical support and like actually having an instance where quite a lot of the time I'll come into Discord and you've already answered questions for me, which is obviously wonderful to see and helps us build better technical support for the community as well. So I think when the other two are still chopping away, guidelines to attend to regarding collaborating in tests. What exactly do you mean by tests there, SMP? I mean, regarding your second question, what if you would test running a validator in the testnet? You know, the validators are actually the one bit of the system that is not really our code, right? You know, it's a compiled version of the Cosmos SDK. In terms of testing stuff for validators, then there's nothing really to test quite yet. Also, we are still kind of working out what the necessities are for having a testnet, either as a testnet chain or as a testnet mixnet or both, because obviously we have to kind of think about what the differences between those two systems would actually be, like in practice, you know, like why people would use a testnet, because obviously it's kind of doubling the amount of infrastructure maintenances that we have to spend time on doing. That said, when mainnet, when the validator cell mainnet is depermissioned, then you can totally run a validator on that because it's permissionless and you can do whatever you want, which is kind of one of the core underlying goals of all of this tech that we've spent however many years like obsessing about, isn't it? But yeah, so if you could kind of clarify what you meant by your first question in terms of guidelines regarding collaborating in tests, that would be cool. And then otherwise, I will move on to the next question. So, Salazar, your question, what releases are coming in July? Top bug fixes or features on the radar? So, there's a couple of things that I say probably one of the biggest things that I can talk about, because there's some very fun stuff that we haven't quite announced yet, which are all pretty crazy. But yeah, I would say that looking at mix fetch, that is probably going to be the biggest feature itself. That's going to like really simplify. Like I said, it's going to really simplify the difficulty in essentially kind of using the network request infrastructure, because instead of having to do what we kind of currently have to do, which is manually constructing a request and like hoping it's on a whitelist and all of this kind of stuff, is at the moment quite clunky. And there's a lot of places as well where it can kind of that process can break down. And you know, you've seen a lot of the work going on under the hood on this particular part of the infrastructure. So really this kind of SOC 5 network requester setup, you know, which is a pretty core part of the infrastructure if you're wanting to do something just like, you know, like browsing the internet, curling files, doing all of this kind of stuff through the mixnet. There's been a lot of work on that, as we've kind of mentioned over the past few months, adding stuff like heartbeat, proper error reporting, all of this kind of stuff. And mixfetch is going to kind of like, yeah, radically simplify a lot of that, both in terms of probably making it a bit more reliable, but then also for people wanting to use the SDK, because we're also going to fold that into the SDK as well. It'll then mean you can essentially kind of you could basically do a request, much like the request library now, which is a very common library that a lot of people use. You'll be able to do much the same thing, but via the mixnet, right? Which is so kind of providing like a really nice layer of abstraction on top of that, making it as easy as possible for people to do stuff with the SDK. Other releases that are coming as well, work is probably going into the TypeScript SDK now as well, starting to flesh that out. So get that ready to be used both in other environments, so in like headless Node.js or something like this. So if you want to write TypeScript server-side code or like non-browser code, after working out how we will do key storage in all of those situations, or like working out a way that we can do key storage that works across each of these different potential situations, you know, a browser, a server, all of that, the assumed security measures for doing stuff like interacting with keys or mnemonics, well, not mnemonics, but you know, keys, secrets, all of this. It's quite different. So we've been working out a way to essentially get that to work so that then we can release the SDK with kind of proper key and account management services, meaning you could have, you know, you could retain an identity over time and then having that work in a couple of environments as well. Those are the biggest releases that are going to be coming out, as well as hopefully also getting these Nym DNS and the service provider contracts up as well, hopefully in July. Nick, looking at your, yes, so the Android APK. stable enough for mass testing. We are not at mass testing quite yet. If obviously you have, you've already been mooching through GitHub and found it in the releases page and stuff. So if you want to test it, please absolutely feel free to do so. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Suda, but I don't think we have like a formal feedback mechanism for people trying out the APK yet. But if you do try it out and get a load of problems, then drop a message, preferably in Element, preferably in the community, public community channel in Element. I will say there's a pair of caveats right now. It's because we're in the testing stages of this. We want to see if we can actually just get it to work before making it nice to use. So if you're on mobile data, it will use a lot of data, and it will also drain your battery quite hard as well, because it's not there for mass testing yet, but absolutely feel free to test it out. Maybe stay on your Wi-Fi so you don't use up all your data with all of the cover traffic. But yeah, any feedback from anyone, even if whatever, it doesn't install something like this, just drop us a message in Element, let us know, or make an issue on GitHub, which would be even nicer. But cool. Serinko has his sound working, so I'm going to pass over to him to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, hopefully this is coming through. I couldn't hear any sound in the beginning, but try like different setup, try in different browsers, and seems like I got a solution here in this setup. So I hope this is coming through to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to the stage. This is my first AMA with Nym as DevRel. I'm new on board, not new to Nym, but new like an official part of a team. I'm pretty happy to be here, catching up the speed, and glad to see community of such size. Just heard about you mentioning about Element, how we can meet more people there, because yeah, we gotta meet where people are at. So Discord, Twitter, that be, but going more towards privacy and self-hosted applications is for sure like one of the aims to get the community to these waters as well.
Look at him, Max. He must be really proud right now. He just joined and he's already shilling Element.
Yeah, man. What else can I say? No, I mean, of course, it's great, and obviously, it's great to have you on board as well. Do you want to kind of tell everyone about maybe other projects that you've worked on a bit, Serinko, or like in what capacity you've worked, or kind of whatever, really, whatever you want to share?
Sure. I've been a privacy researcher. I do some basic like programming, but nothing on a developer scale. Can read some code. I've been working before as like inside researcher for a project called DarkFi. It's like a native layer L1 for anonymity engineering, including blockchain, but also other applications such as alternative like chat app, peer-to-peer version of a IRC protocol called IRCD, or no, I think they call it DarkFi IRCD or something, and other applications which they run on their own. I was doing like a inside thesis for the team, and market analysis and privacy research. And past months I've been helping Lunar DAO, which is a Lunar Punk DAO. It's a privacy venture and also like an educational platform on privacy, anonymity, and security, on not only in crypto, in general, in digital security. Anything from what Nym does over to privacy transactions, over to chats and stuff. There's like this wiki.lunardao.net, which is something I've been helping the folks as just like a community member of the DAO itself, helping them to develop, because I think to have like an aggregated index of what's already existing, and then together with the community be building manuals in like one place, like very easy, just like a user manuals, how to use existing tools, while the squad, which means the DAO members, are voting which privacy and anonymity solutions to invest in, as to have a tech which is not existing just yet and need to be developed. That's basically like what the DAO does. But my part was not the financial advices or anything like that, more on a research side, on education side, just helping them. And yeah, here I am. I've been around Nym for quite some time, but been talking to some of the people in an organization, and we figure out it would be really nice to work together and developer relations that be.
Exactly. And that wiki, for anyone who hasn't checked out the Lunar DAO wiki, it is great. And I think this is that kind of thing of also having projects that don't also just talk about their own tech, but like also act as these aggregators. That's something that we also have seen with, the work that like Nitrous Verify have been doing as well, doing articles both on like how you would use Nym to access certain sites or certain apps, but also just the more general, guides on using graphene, aggregating all of that in one place, because that is one thing that could definitely be, I think, improved in general, is the starting to mesh these maybe kind of silos of also quite niche information about privacy tech, privacy projects, privacy hardware, collecting all these links to all of these silos together and starting to connect them as well to kind of present all of them to a broader community. So everyone kind of doesn't have to find everything on their own. Is, I think, also like a very important thing to do. And it's definitely like a pattern that we've seen emerge a bit over the last year and undoubtedly continue as well.
It is awesome to have you on, Serinko, and I'm glad that we finally managed to solve your audio issues. We have a new community question. Should we jump into that? I'm not sure whether it's for you, Serinko, to answer, but the question is, what do you think are the main obstacles for developers who are willing to integrate with Nym right now?
Oh, I guess that's more of a question for like senior members here, particularly Max Nym, but just talk about it today, and that's one of the things is to make it clear how to plug in. I think that's gonna be one of my focuses, to basically figure out how to, do 1, 2, 3 steps, because development is already quite a work on itself, and then you shouldn't have to have a lot of work on figuring out how to plug into the tech through the documentation and through the basic like the access points. So I guess there will be a big part of my focus on trying to help the organization with making this clear.
And then alongside what Serinko just said as well, now that the team is growing, I can also spend some time working on the other way that devs plug in. Once you've actually found the developer guides, the portal, this kind of stuff, then also, or at least one of the ways that I definitely learn when I'm trying to learn about a new library or a new piece of code is also through examples as well. Starting on the tutorials again, trying to make it so everything has at least one good tutorial example for how you build a headless TypeScript application using the SDK, how you use the REST SDK to build a service provider, how you do stuff in the browser, all of these kinds of things as well, right? So those are alongside the work that Serinko is going to be doing, also the practical examples, the things that inevitably when you're learning a new piece of code, you copy, paste, and fiddle around with, so you kind of get an idea of how something's working under the hood and how you can use it in your own projects too.
Yeah, and our head of engineering, Mark Sinclair, has like a full sleeve of ideas and possible improvements. So it's gonna be a lot to catch up on that question.
Oh hell yeah! It's gonna be great. There's a lot of stuff brewing that now that some kind of behind the scenes work has also happened as well, which I don't know if we can talk about. So I think Sudo, maybe so if you can, we'll talk about it. If we can't, then I won't.
It's up to us, Max. We make the rules here. This is our AMA, so it's up to us. Go ahead.
I'll leave it for next time when I know. There's a lot of stuff.
I'm even teased myself now. It's you build up pretty good.
Well, gotta keep people wanting, gotta keep people guessing. Next question, Nick again, coming in with the solid questions, man. These are good, keeping us on our toes. How do you measure the success of developer engagement initiatives? What metrics do you use to track progress? So this is another thing that is going to be restarted or kind of revamped soon, which I'd say one of those things, which probably also has quite clear metrics to it as well, is developer grants. So I think there's a couple of ways that you could look at it. There's a couple of ways you could either look at the amount of people that are applying, maybe. That would be a very simple one. One that I would prefer to look at would actually be setting up a situation whereby you can kind of have repeated grants also be given out to people as well, right? So instead of one of the problems that is maybe something that does apply to both grant schemes and hackathons is how do you basically go from having people do kind of one-off work to being able to actually have it as a vehicle that like supports your developer ecosystem, whereby there are people coming back for subsequent grants. Maybe you have like a rolling relationship with certain developers who kind of just consistently have a grant ongoing, which is actually very akin to how a lot of DAOs work, right? Like if you're employed by a DAO or if you work for a DAO before Nym, who was working for Curve Labs, specifically working for Prime now, and every couple of months, then we proposed a bit of work. We did that work, and at the end, and then there was kind of a rolling set of kind of continuous grants building on previous work that was done. Having that model be properly enacted and actually having certain core, let's say core community developers, or people who are kind of consistently doing these things, that would be one metric of success that I would see. Another metric of success with regards to specifically kind of onboarding devs. Maybe you could look at kind of membership sizes and channels and stuff like that, but I'd prefer to maybe take this more this more holistic approach as well. And also looking at where in the stack we can also draw feedback into as well. So one of the things that exactly. Serb's point as well. Receive feedback on bug reports as well. This is one of the things that we're having a bit of internal reorganization. This is going to be one of the things that we are going to really focus on. Actually, kind of doing, especially with the SDKs, working on kind of a feature feedback release kind of cycle. Well, Nick, no, I don't think we're necessarily planning to hire more DevRel right now, unfortunately. But there will be other ways to be involved, both as a dev and on the community level as well.
The other question is, which I think is also a good one, will there be a way to privately submit bug crash reports directly from the apps in the future? So now that we have all of this stuff coming out, such as the alpha state or like the alpha stage, Nym Connect for mobile, for Android, maybe it makes sense to do that. What are your thoughts, Max?
Do you mean kind of like not through GitHub, not through like a public method, but actually through the application itself? Because if so, then yeah, there are definitely ways of doing that, ways that we're also already looking at. One of the interesting things that something like that throws up, though, which is kind of something that has also come up with regards to questions about metrics about the mixnet, is that we're kind of designing software that we want to be private by default and by design. So also how you do stuff like adding optional crash reporting and bug reporting things, whilst also still kind of retaining privacy by default as your baseline kind of application architecture and development status. So having everything be very opt-in if someone is wanting to just use Nym Connect to beta test it and are willing to maybe share crash reports and stuff. That is something that we are looking into. But again, it's not because we're kind of trying to always retain this base level of privacy first. It's not quite as easy as just maybe what other applications do, which is just like whacking telemetry into a beta release, if that makes sense.
There's common practice for everything, and there are really great tools for everything, right up to the point where you want to do something privacy first. Just like we talked about last time, about platforms to like messaging platforms and community platforms. There's Discord, which is great. You have roles, you have like all kinds of channels and a lot of bots, like ecosystem of bots and all of that. But when you want to look for something that is actually privacy preserving, you can't find that, which I think is a bit of a state of the world kind of thing, right? As soon as you want something privacy first, you basically have to come up with everything from scratch yourself.
Either come up with it yourself, or you have to kind of at least like adapt current best practices, because the vast majority of application development doesn't necessarily focus on privacy first and hasn't done. So this is also, where in a certain sense, we also have to work out new best practices of how we do this as well, which obviously slows stuff down a bit. But we are trying to build technology with a new focus and also try and build it in, to a certain extent, a new way. So this is a necessary part of the process to both build privacy preserving stuff, but also stuff that is good, reactive, and that we are able to kind of, as seamlessly as possible do stuff like gather crash reports and stuff like this.
We have a spicy question, unless Serinko has anything to add to what was said. Do you?
No, go on.
Next question can turn out to be a spicy one. Can you drop the sneak peeks or any sneak peeks from the dev side that you can share with us?
Aside from what I've already shared today, no, not really. There would be, but just that there are going to be some nice, big, tasty announcements coming up. That's all I can share, which is kind of the teaser version of Soon TM. So sorry about that.
You can just feel free to use Soon TM. Everybody's used to that at this point. People are kind of expecting it. All right, well then that was our last community question for now. So guys, if you have any further questions, then make sure to ask them.
Yeah, so actually just to refocus on what Sergeant said, yeah, this is something, let's say the kind of lag on feedback on bug reports is something that we're, aware of. This is to a certain extent a hangover from when, we were kind of in the previous mode of developing, in the previous mode of what we were doing, which was always very focused on the mixnet itself. Now we're moving into the stage where, defined products in the sense of applications, but also different ways that developers can hook in the sense of like the SDKs. That's the stage that we're now moving into, that we're now at. And so because of that, we're doing a bit of rejigging, and we are aware that feedback has been still on bug reports, but this is something that we are very aware of and fixing and putting structures into place to get a far snappier kind of feedback on that. So just as a mixture of an apology and it will be sorted soon kind of response. On to Supermia's question, what are the future plans or projects for the DevRel team now it's been expanded? So one immediate thing is just that obviously DevRel has way more capacity. It now has double the capacity because Serinko's here, and soon it will have triple the capacity because the, as of yet, not revealed third person who's joining is joining very soon as well. So that's like just a general thing, right? That the capacity of DevRel has expanded, and what that capacity also means is that we can also concentrate more on individual things as well, which obviously is just a far nicer way of working for everyone. The projects, something Serinko already hinted at as well with some of the ideas that Mark has, expect far more, let's say, demos, tutorials, and kind of like easy ways to hook into using the mixnet as a developer. Right now, it's still quite based in some of your own technical experimentation and reading the docs and stuff like this. So those kind of entry points will both be made a lot clearer. And one of the big first rules that Serinko is doing is also going through the docs that have been patched together in the last couple of years, and kind of refreshing that, making stuff more distinct for developers, node operators, people who just want to use integrations, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah, I think some of a medium-term focus will be to also break in like more distinct level exactly what is for developers, what is for operators, but then also what's just like a basic user guide for people who don't care about SDK because it's a foreign language for them and don't want to have that as a part of their like onboarding experience when trying to either install things basically, but even like run mix nodes later on in future validators and that type of stuff, gateways, what have you, and separate it from the docs for the developers in more distinct fashion and more like a limited focus based on the levels and the intentions in which people are coming in and want to work with the Nym technologies.
You still have 5 minutes to go, right, Max? Before you need to run.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. So if you could choose what should you develop making use of the mixnet, there's a couple of easy things that you could immediately think of, right? Chat. We have some people working on trying to set up essentially like a proto-mail bridge. So the piece of software that you run to be able to kind of like have your proto-mail stuff be interacted with or like linked up to something like Thunderbird or maybe like Mutt or something if you want to do like something in a terminal. So then we have people working on that, and I'm sure they would also maybe appreciate collaborations with that. The other thing that would maybe be quite interesting as well is starting to think about tooling for developing the mixnet too, right? This is a thing that kind of, I think, naturally arises out of people needing to build tools themselves, and then they kind of become their own projects. We saw this with, especially if you look at like the Ethereum smart contract ecosystem, right? You had stuff like Truffle, and then Hardhat, Remix, all of these tools that kind of came about because people kind of built them themselves when they were to help them develop apps, but then turned into this kind of like developer tools. And we are already starting to see some of these things, the test my node feature and all of this kind of stuff. And node operators is good, but also thinking around what kind of tooling would you need for building and testing service providers, for instance. I think that's like a really interesting possible avenue of development. I would say that alongside kind of any apps as well that you think could be either augmented by using the mixnet as like a transport layer or just new apps themselves.
On the question of tooling, what do you think is the most burning hole right now in terms of like some tooling that is missing that would be very helpful for the project in some way?
So there's one little guy that actually I've kind of been working on in the little spare time I've had recently that I really want to finish in the next couple of weeks, that I actually started building when I was building the service provider that I did a demo of in Barcelona, because all I wanted to do was debug the logging on my service provider. And to actually do that, I had to set up another client, and I had to get the address and then initialize it. And I had to kind of do all of this stuff very manually just to really be testing, does my service provider actually like log the incoming message does it parse it correctly? Which it doesn't sound like much, but if you're spending like 3 days building something, it's actually a lot of time and a lot of like also mental effort that you then waste being like, oh, why doesn't this work? Oh, because my other Nym client crashed, blah, blah, all of this. So actually what I'm building is I'm just building like a very simple little thing that is just a Nym client wrapped in the Rust SDK. And you can either get it to send messages to another address kind of on a loop, or wait for incoming messages and then maybe reply to them, or just wait and log them. So just that's a very simple little bit of tooling there. But then what that is that when you're working on your service provider, then in another terminal window, you can just have this little binary running that's allowing you to more kind of seamlessly focus on just debugging the thing that you're actually building. So just kind of removing that train of thought and possible distraction from your development process. But you can also see that arises from a need to do it that you only kind of realize when you're actually in the position of like trying to debug why the code you're writing doesn't work. I hope that made sense to everyone aside from.
Made sense to me. Anything to add there, Serinko?
No, I think things were mentioned. Like on a question, if I could choose like to connect different projects, we mentioned No Trust Verify, we mentioned Wiki and LunarDAO and stuff. There's a big problem of chat messenger applications being based on identity, whether it's a phone number or whether it's some alternative to that, like Session have. And for a long time, there was IRCD by DarkFi, which I mentioned today, kind of like the flagship of doing it differently. Now, speaking of No Trust Verify, has a really nice article and LunarDAO published on a wiki, a manual on SimpleX or Simplex, if you wish, which is quite a nice chat app which works anywhere between terminal all the way to Android, kind of GUI, without identity, right? It's like you pick your name, nick, anytime you want, and there is no connection in between the messages in the past on a network. So it's quite sweet. Thinking about if that's the direction people would want to go, which I'm personally quite interested, looking how that can be plugged into Mixnet as an integration would be quite interesting. If Salazar or anyone else here is wondering what to do with time and want to expand Nym Connect possibilities.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to go. Happy to duck out and to leave both of you guys chatting if you want to continue.
We'll keep it going. It was awesome to have you, Max, and see you in 2 weeks and 1 day. Because guys, normally, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, these are on Wednesdays. A very unique event, which was on Tuesday. It's unique in more than one way.
Yeah, it's just because of me, and I wanted to celebrate solstice and not have to be online. Thank you very much for moving it to Tuesday. I very much appreciate that.
We care about our team here at Nym.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for the good questions as well. It's always good when questions throw you a bit. Keep them coming. And yeah, I will talk to all of you soon in various channels, but hopefully Element more than anything else as another shameless plug that I do every DevRel AMA. So yeah, ciao everyone.
Like clockwork. Catch you later, Max. Oh, now we can't say bad things about Max. He's not here anymore. So how has he been as a boss? Is he treating you well?
Everyone's been pretty amazing. I'm a bit fried. Where I am became quite hot, literally overnight, and this is a 4th or 5th call I have today, so I'm a bit brainwashed. But Max has been great, just as all of you. But it always comes like when there's disagreements or conflicts, you realize what characters people have. So far, we didn't have any, so I hope it's gonna go that direction. And anytime disagreements or conflicts will appear, we will find them as a constructive part of life, as they should be. So, but so far so good. Have nothing bad to say. We know Max from before, so it's a bit easier.
That's actually a really good approach. I admire that. Next question from the community, actually. I think this is something that you probably have some thoughts on. So Salazar is asking, how do you think IRL events such as conferences, hackathons, help creating a strong developer community? Do we have plans for any such events in the coming weeks, months?
You might be better one to answer that question, but events I think are important because in the end, those of us who are putting ourselves out there, particularly people around community, DevRels and what have you, are to be front for the community and the actual, when we speak community, like when I came to crypto first and I was like community, and I was like, what people talking about? Everyone's just like on some chats and applications. Then I figured out like, yeah, it has its strengths, but I was like, up until the time using like Bitgin or IRC or something, or emails, PGP, it was like an extension to an actual life, right? Where you cannot catch up or you need to schedule a real meeting, you use these things, but you will actually live like social life. And then kind of like this became, and COVID spiced it up even more. I mean, it has the advantage of, you can be all over the globe talking to people anywhere you want, as long as you speak the same language or have somebody who translates for you. But I do think that not only it creates stronger developer community as like get the product quicker, but it actually creates what community means is these social interactions. You're just hanging out with Max on Web3 privacy, with like Mikola, who I see here, and Sudo the other day. So it creates like whole different layer to things. So for me, that there's definitely important. But you might be better, Sudo, to answer on a question how that plays in actual like production of a code, because again I'm new to Nym, so I can't like pull it out.
It's a bit further away from my forte, specifically the impact of IRL events and meetups and stuff like that on development. I do think for a fact that IRL events are profoundly important. For example, for context, guys, I met Serinko shortly before he joined Nym at a Nym meetup in Prague, which you probably know about if you followed the conversation on Telegram and Discord. So it was a very small event, like there were, I think, 12 people or something, but it was a really important networking, hanging out exercise, which sounds a bit mundane until you realize that we're very social people. And, when you're looking at a Telegram chat or a Discord chat or whatever chat you're looking at, all you see are user IDs and text. It's about like 1% of a human. It's very different to actually hang out in real life. So both meetups that I participated in so far, not to mention the events, they're a bit different, but both Nym meetups that I participated in, one was in Berlin and the other was in Prague, was really interesting in a lot of different ways, and also made me think about Nym in a different way because of the conversations that we had. It was very much a two-sided, personable thing rather than just having these AMAs and community calls. So it is both to me on a personal level, and also I think to the Nym community as a whole, it's profoundly important to have IRL meetings. And one thing I can say is that I haven't been doing a lot of hackathons so far. That's for multiple reasons. Pulling off a good, like actually good hackathon with proper deliverables, which is fun for everybody, is very difficult. So that's one of the reasons, and also just maturity reasons. There were a few reasons why we were not focusing as heavily on hackathons before, but they are something that we're looking into. I can say soon TM once again to that as well. But definitely there is like an internal switch towards hackathons. If we'll do one, we'll do it right. So it's not going to be one of those quote unquote hackathons where you have, like 4 hours to quote unquote create something, but like a proper actual hackathon, making use of Nym stuff, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the SDKs or whatever else it may be. So that's super exciting to me. So I'm definitely not going to miss that one. It will be really, really fun to meet some cool people hacking on all the stuff that Nym has to offer. What about you, Serinko? By the way, do you go to hackathons? Are you a hacker type?
I don't have the skill set to be hacking in hackathons. I happen to go to some to, be around, see what people developing and learn, and kind of make my analysis on, because a lot of that stuff is kind of like, yeah, we want to win a prize type of thing. And on the other hand, there is some cool solutions being developed at the same time. So it's always this conflict in between what's actually created and what are the incentives for people to take part of those. It has its downside as well. As for events, we'll be in many events. I'm Europe based myself, and only in coming months there's a list of things we've been talking about. Maybe Sudo, you can navigate the community to where that's released, because there's actually quite a lot.
Yeah, so there's a whole host of events that we're doing. And one of the other soon TM points that we can make for you guys, we have an amazing new events person on board now who's responsible for keeping together and also putting some structure into the events that we're going to. And that will also include finally creating the events calendar for all of you guys to be able to take a look at, and see whether you're at the same location where some member is presenting, that given time, because we do go to a lot of events. But I think I can disclose, Serinko, that both of us are going to Bitcoin Paradigm in Switzerland next weekend, right? And also its side event, the Privacy Reunion. So that's going to be fun. If you happen to be in Switzerland, make sure to drop by and say hi.
Yeah, that's going to be big. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I think this is probably going to be the last question that I'm going to ask from you, because we're almost bumping up against the time limit here. But I'm actually also interested in this one. Salazar is asking, do you run any Nym infrastructure yourself? And if not, what would you be looking to try out first?
I run everything. It was the first thing I did when we even started to discuss this job. I do not run validator because the set is not open for new people to join right now for good reasons. So on a mixednet side, I run all the platform. I think I stopped the gateway with the requester, and I've been facing challenges because I've been running it on self-hosted machines, like completely self-hosted. So there is also something to quite work on, because there's a problem with the public IP when you run your machine. You don't want to have it like completely open to the internet, right? So I've been tackling these problems. It's been a nice challenge, but I might actually shift to some of the more friendly VPS providers and just put it there. I'm not talking about the biggest ones out there, but like more alternative, preferably the ones which you can pay with crypto and stuff. So I'll be shifting there, but I've been running already on self-hosted solutions.
Oh, I see. That's actually a good point. Unknowingly shilling the points of the delegators program, which we recently launched. I'm not sure whether you're familiar. It's one of the key things that we wanted, not to see another node running in one of the big providers. That's actually pretty important. When it comes to running stuff locally, it's a bit problematic because of reliability. It's very hard to give the same reliability to, or like provide and ensure the same reliability to a machine that you're running locally to something runs on massive providers machine. And the other thing is static IP. Like, do you have static IP? Because I think that's pretty rare, right?
Yeah, that's the problem there. It's not that direct and that easy, even from the documentation as it is now. I will share a reflection on Nym, and that's also a part of my responsibility to set it up. Question is like, to which degree this is like a technical problem, and to which degree it can be better documented. I think it's both. Now documentation ends up with words. You need to have a bit of luck, which I don't want like the future operators to be betting on luck when we speaking computers. So I think we should be clear on how to set it up and from which degree this is impossible and will be perhaps possible in the future or not. It's also fine to say that for these and these reasons, this is not a solution for the stack, and that's also fine.
Maybe the last follow-up question to all of this. When you were setting up Nym infrastructure, did you find it easy or was it very challenging? Did you have the right documentation? What was the process like?
So for me, the biggest problem was with this open and static IP, and go around that and announce host and try and error kind of setup. Other than that, it was pretty straightforward. I'm used to usually just build things myself and use these documentations. And of course, I could see things which can be improved. Already working on that. So on a side what's public in the docs and in developer portal, these things will be changed, as we already mentioned in this interview. But then it wasn't actually helped. My first thing was this Gateway Cosmos event, like first thing as officially being in Nym, helping the dev there and Harry with their workshop and helping the users who had some questions, mostly on syntax or mostly on like little things. People who are not used to, like go through terminal and stuff were struggling, like few little things missing, like, change directory or something. So other than that, it's not hardcore if you used to be building and running your stuff. We definitely do want to lower that threshold for new operators to be able to, spin it up.
Well, actually, it was just demoed during the previous community call, which was focused once again on delegators program participants. there is community developed tool, which makes it incredibly easy. Even I could do it. I was the one being demoed, and I'm not a technical guy at all. And I could spin up a mix node with like 2-3 commands. It was pretty insane. And also, the tool can migrate nodes, update nodes with a single command, which is super cool. Which I think brings us to the end of this call. I'm super glad to finally be able to have you on, and hopefully you're going to be a staple of these DevRel AMAs going forward. I'm even more happy for people to join in the audience. Amazing questions. Thanks for all of those. Any last remarks?
Usually that's the thing. The question is like, how do you build Nym mixnet and stuff? And sometimes you have to like figure out missing syntax or something, but in the end you do it because like it's intuitive for me. What is not is any application such as Discord, Twitter, and the type of stuff which should be click, hop. But then I always like bang into some strange problem and something like first 10 minutes not getting sound, another 10 minutes I can't broadcast sound, but here we are. So from now on, looking forward to be part of any next events such like this, and especially the in real life ones. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to Discord and having it sorted out, that may be famous last words right there. I'm looking forward to seeing seeing you join with no issues like next time. Knocking on wood, keeping my fingers crossed for you. And then as for the community, huge thanks for joining. Once again, there is a poll up for this wonderful, very prestigious DevRel AMA. So the bot is perma broken now, the dispenser bot. So you will need to DM. I'm going to tag him here. You probably know our dear friend Jay, Mr. Pizzaman III. He's the guy who you need to DM to get your poll up for this event. Huge thanks everybody for joining. See you next time, and have a lovely day. Bye everyone.
Goodbye, good morning, good night, wherever you are.
Catch you later, folks.